Yo, what is going on, Outriders, and welcome back to the channel. Hey, in this video we're going to be unpacking everything we know about the Technomancer class in the Outriders demo. And this will include what all the active skills look like that we can see so far, the skill trees, and the armor and weapon perks that make some great World Tier 5 builds for your Technomancer so far. We'll also look down the road to see what's in store for people who choose to play the Technomancer when the full game releases and new perks and skills become available. During my time with the demo so far, I've logged several hours on my Technomancer after reaching the max level of 7 and World Tier 5, so I could get a wide view of all the available perks on the weapons and armor so far, as those dramatically change how you play the game on your given class. So first, let's hit all of the active skills that we can use so far in the demo. These abilities are quite different from the other classes, since the others tend to be more up close and personal and in the fray, doing things like crowd control or aggro and damage tanking, or in the case of the Trickster, quick dashes in and out of combat for big damage skirmisher gameplay. But the Technomancer skills are more about keeping your distance and controlling the battlefield. Some skills directly influence your weapons, so that you can wreak havoc with buffed guns instead of only using abilities that do space magic attacks, for example. The first active skill you'll unlock is called Shrapnel. It's a proximity mine that can be placed on the ground that will detonate whenever an enemy combatant comes within the detonation radius. This mine can be used to slow the approaches of big tanky opponents or smaller trash mobs that rush you. If you need to reposition because things are getting too hot, you can just toss that mine down and kite the enemies into it while you find a new place to post up. There are also a number of armor perks that randomly drop on blue armor that can affect how Shrapnel works. One perk gives you an extra mine to throw out so that you get 2 Shrapnel mines per cooldown instead of 1. Another perk increases the activation and detonation radius of the mine so it covers a larger area. This is really where the active skills on each class really start to shine. It's when you start to modify them and play off of them with other specific perks in the game that the game really elevates itself, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The second active skill you'll unlock is the Cryo Turret. This one is pretty straightforward. You toss out a turret that will immediately take the aggro off of you and allow you to reposition or peek out of cover for some sustained fire. The turret will slow and freeze targets it chooses based on proximity and who's shooting it. It also deals out damage on top of the slowing and freezing. It does have a health bar though, so it can be destroyed in seconds if you aren't careful about where you place it. You'll find armor perks on blue armor that can extend the duration of the turret, so it's on the field longer if not destroyed. You'll find perks that increase its damage output, and perks that reduce its cooldown. A couple of things worth noting before we move on to the next skill. There's a weapon perk called Proliferation. It couples extremely well with the Technomancer because of the different ways that the Technomancer can spread status effects. The Cryo Turret works well with this weapon perk because Proliferation will make it so that when you shoot an enemy who is already under the effects of a status condition like freeze or toxin, it will then spread that status effect to the closest enemy. So if your turret freezes an enemy, you can shoot them with your Proliferation weapon and then spread that freeze to another enemy, and so on and so on. The last thing I'll add about the Cryo Turret is that its health bar can later be expanded by leveling up the Technomancer's skill trees. The third active skill you'll unlock is the Pain Launcher. This is going to be important for early build Technomancers because it's the quickest and most reliable way to interrupt captains and bosses who are charging up powerful attacks. As a Technomancer, you have less health than the other classes because by design you are intended to do big damage at range but get punished if you take too much aggro. The Pain Launcher is going to help you interrupt some of the most deadly attacks out there. Some captains will charge up attacks that will teleport you directly to their location. As a Technomancer, your job is to stay on the fringes, so that's a real problem. The Pain Launcher is a small missile launcher that shoots a barrage of missiles in a straight line out from where you're standing, out into the direction that you're looking when you cast it. So make sure that when you activate it, you look where you want it to go, and that's the direction it will shoot in. This does big damage to trash mobs, or it'll couple well with the Shrapnel mine to immediately disintegrate chunky breachers and grenadiers that bum rush you. Also, like I said, due to its quick cast and release, you'll want to use it on captains that begin charging their attacks, as your Shrapnel mine is not a good reactionary skill to interrupt their charging sequence. My World Tier 5 solo farming build right now includes the Pain Launcher and Blighted Rounds, which we'll get to next, but I don't take off the Pain Launcher because it's a great way to deal with the major threats that can ruin a run really fast. There's also an armor perk you'll want to keep an eye out for that modifies your Pain Launcher to freeze enemies on hit. That is extremely helpful if you're using a proliferation weapon, which as a Technomancer, you absolutely should be doing. The fourth and final skill you'll unlock in the demo is Blighted Rounds. This is arguably the best skill you'll have access to as a solo farming Technomancer. With my current build, I can activate this skill one time and never run out of it during an entire side mission. I can literally tank as a Technomancer with Blighted Rounds, and I'll show you how in a minute. But first, what's Blighted Rounds do? When you activate Blighted Rounds, it will immediately replenish your magazine to full on whatever weapon you have out at the time. Each bullet in the magazine will now spread a toxic status effect to targets and enemies around the target as well. The perk ends when you reload or stow the weapon. Now there's a lot to talk about with Blighted Rounds because of how they work. It will change dramatically as you acquire new perks. First, it's worth noting that if you're going to be using Blighted Rounds, you should be running a light machine gun and switch over to it instead of your sniper rifle whenever you activate Blighted Rounds. Since snipers have low mag counts and Blighted Rounds does not change the amount of damage it does based on the mag size, it'll do the same amount of toxic damage per bullet regardless of the weapon archetype. It makes much more sense to use a light machine gun with, say, 100 bullets in the mag as opposed to a sniper with 8 to 15. You're going to get way more bang for your buck. Now, let me talk to you about how insane my Blighted Rounds build is right now. I have a proliferation light machine gun, okay? Again, proliferation is the weapon perk that spreads status effects when you shoot someone afflicted by one. So my light machine gun with 100 bullets in the magazine is what I swap to when I activate Blighted Rounds, because I'm going to spread that toxic effect to every combatant in the room. On top of that, I have an armor perk that gives me a full second magazine for every activation of Blighted Rounds. Now, Blighted Rounds has a full 60-second cooldown, so having now 200 bullets instead of 100 of insane toxic spreading, that's nuts. My LMG also has increased crit damage, so I'm pumping out more DPS with my bullets. On top of that, I also have an armor perk that makes it so that every time I kill an enemy with Blighted Rounds, it refunds a huge amount of ammo into my magazine. So I can just consistently shoot and spray with an LMG and constantly replenish it and never run out of Blighted Rounds because I never have to reload or stow. And I have a second magazine. If I do happen to hit the bottom of that first one, I've got that second magazine per activation as well. Now on top of that, right, it goes deeper. On top of that, I have a perk that gives a percentage of all my damage done with Blighted Rounds back as healing done to me. I can literally tank an entire side mission with one activation of Blighted Rounds with this build. Technomancers also have access to built-in leech life. When dealing damage, you're constantly healing yourself as you dish out sustained LMG damage and toxic damage with this combination. It's just absolutely insane, you all. It's just absolutely insane. The last thing we should chat about is the skill trees. In the demo, you'll only have access to up to 2 skill tree nodes, but you have 3 different skill trees to invest in, and they do have some overlap early in the trees, but eventually you'll get to a point of no return where you'll be full sending on one of these skill trees until you get to the end of it. One of the more interesting perks in the skill tree is a perk that causes you to take 15% more damage in combat as a Technomancer. Yeah, you're going to be taking more damage, but it will also amp up all your damage dealt by 20% in combat. This makes the Technomancer potentially a stellar glass cannon for cooperative play. I can't wait to see what builds we can play with as a glass cannon type role in the full release. But these skill trees will focus on maximizing your toxic skills, maximizing your gadget usage, or finding a middle ground as a jack of all trades setup. Personally, I'd say the top or the middle trees will be the best to invest in, but I'll be full sending in the Pestilence tree, as that tree dramatically increases sniper rifle damage, and it's the tree with the glass cannon perk that I mentioned. So combining those things, you're going to be doing big damage at range, but you have to be careful not to draw too much aggro. Sounds like a whole lot of fun to me. Well, that's going to do it for the Technomancer demo breakdown. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay and the commentary. I would encourage you to continue to farm once you hit the level cap, because you're going to want to gather all the armor perks you possibly can, since all your progress carries over to the full release. Stockpile all those perks so that you can break them down and have permanent access to those perks when crafting, so that you can hit the ground running when the full game launches with a workable build. Thanks for watching the video, y'all. Feel free to drop a like on the video only if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for additional Outriders content. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and we'll see you on Enoch.